Since we only have a half hour to talk about low-code plugins, I thought I'd expand the topic a little bit to include, to include Dataverse Accelerator, so that everybody understands that there's a difference between Dataverse Accelerator and low-code plugins, because right now they're kind of synonymous. The Dataverse Accelerator and low-code plugins kind of came on the scene at the same time about a year ago. And I didn't really prepare a deck for this session. My plan was to just kind of run through demos and take questions and just kind of explain how things work, either behind the scenes or otherwise. So, oh boy, and my dog is going nuts right now. 1 second. Not sure what's going on with him. So the Dataverse Accelerator is essentially the front end of low-code plugins. And let me share my screen so you can see what I mean. All right. So here we are, the Dataverse Accelerator in all its glory. And the home page prominently featuring low-code plugins. So the Dataverse Accelerator is going to be evolving, and what it essentially is sort of a experimental place for tools and features to light up within Dataverse before they're actually part of the product. And I think Jamie hinted at this a little bit, as to how things come into the platform. A lot of new features that come into the platform are actually built on top of the platform, right? So if you look at anything from like pipelines, for example, to what we were talking about a little earlier with Power Catalog, right? Like those are effectively solutions that are first-party solutions that Microsoft has built and deployed on top of Dataverse. And there's, so they're not like natively necessarily built into the platform, they're built on top of the platform. And the Dataverse Accelerator is a similar concept. Most of the first-party applications that Microsoft has built are more focused on like model-driven app scenarios for the most part. But the Dataverse Accelerator is kind of a Microsoft dipping their toe into building more Canvas sort of style applications, first-party applications. So the Dataverse Accelerator is intended to be more of a container for more of these sort of experimental features to light up, and then eventually will likely get graduated into the product itself. The first incarnation, the first tool, the first thing that was built into the Dataverse Accelerator happens to be low-code plugins. I'm working with the Dataverse team now. I used to work, so I work for Exalents, which is Aiden's company. So we are, I'll just do an intro halfway into this, but we are, a small consulting firm based in the DC area, and we do consulting for a lot of government contracts, but we also have a vendor relationship with Microsoft. So I've been, for the past 3 years, actually working with Microsoft as a vendor, and I worked with the PowerCat team for a long time, and just recently moved over to working with the Dataverse team, the Dataverse engineering group. So I've actually am now sort of immersed in this Dataverse Accelerator world, and we're working on some new things to come. So stay tuned, pay attention to that space, it's kind of cool, kind of a cool concept, and I think it has the feeling of a sort of XRM toolbox in the cloud type of vibe to it, where you're gonna start to see some of these things that maybe there's gaps in the platform that they want to fill in quickly, or give a, provide a way for customers to, to fill those gaps before they show up in the platform. And in this case, the low-code plugins backend was kind of built, but there was no front end for it at the time. And so the Dataverse Accelerator was the way to sort of get a maker experience into the platform. And the Dataverse Accelerator is currently deployed everywhere. So it will show up in your environment, and you should be able to use it. So any questions with that? Sort of laying the groundwork a little bit. All right, so let's talk low-code plugins. Low-code plugins are effectively the pro-code plugins that we all, or some of us, know and love. They've been around forever in the platform, even as far back as when I started working with the platform, which was a long time ago. And they were always, C# DLLs that you built using, pro code techniques, and they're effectively started out as, they're sort of like database triggers, if anybody knows what those are. But they allow you to sort of insert business logic into the pipeline of events in Dataverse. So on create of a record, on delete of a record, I want to perform some action on update of a record, for example. You can write plugins to plug into those pipelines that says, on create of a record, I want to send an email to Aiden's inbox because I want to spam his inbox because I'm mad at him, for example. Maybe maybe a better use case than that, but that you can do it using that. And all of that stuff happens server side, much like Flow does, right? Like, and there's a lot of parallels between plugins and flows, and there's different reasons to use them, and there's different reasons why you wouldn't want to use one or the other. I've always preferred plugins because that's sort of where I came from, and I never really trusted Flow, but I probably should at this point. But the one sort of glaringly obvious thing about flows as opposed to plugins is they don't ever operate synchronously, right? So you fire off a flow and on create of a record, and you never really know until you get the, some message back that your flow is failing, whether or not that those emails to Aiden's inbox got sent. So with plugins, you can actually do those things synchronously. If I create a record and it fails to send that email, it's going to fail the entire pipeline. It's going to roll back all the changes. So that record never actually even gets created, right? So these are sort of business critical things that you want to inject into the events that are happening in Dataverse. And they're pretty powerful, but they're not very accessible, right? Because you have to have a developer to write them and deploy them, and they're not very visible either, right? Obviously, you would source control that C#, and you would that's the way that you would make them visible, but they're kind of a black box once they're registered in Dataverse as a DLL. So along comes low-code plugins. Low-code plugins give a little bit more visibility to building plugins, a little bit more democratization of building plugins, using PowerFX as opposed to C#, not having to create a library or a DLL or know how to create a library or a DLL. Not have to download the plugin registration tool from the SDK in order to register it, which is just a kind of a pain, but you can actually do this from the maker portal, right? You can create a plugin directly from the maker portal using PowerFX, and they operate identically to your traditional C# plugins. They operate synchronously. They operate within the pipeline of the creation, update, deletion of a record. So if they fail, they too will roll back any changes that were made, and yeah, and they're pretty awesome actually. Any questions before I jump in here and just kind of show you guys a couple of examples?
We have a few questions in the chat. First of all, can you use low-code plugins in model-driven apps?
Of course you can. Yes.
Of course.
So, yes.
Go ahead.
Well, you can use them in the context of a model-driven app, you know, sources data from Dataverse. So, not limited to model-driven apps. If you have a Canvas app and you're creating records in Dataverse from your from your Canvas app, those plugins will trigger as well. So anything interacting with Dataverse will trigger a plugin. Anything interacting with a Dataverse entity table will trigger these plugins. So yes, model-driven apps.
Next question, what is the cost?
What is the cost? That's a fantastic question. The cost is zero.
For free.
It is absolutely for free. And I'm glad somebody brought that up, because that's another probably win in the plugin column for why to use those over other technologies. Because obviously there's a cost associated with Power Automate that you don't have if you're using plugins. So they come built into the platform, and they can do a lot of the things that Power Automate can do now, which I'll show you, but not everything. So they can't fully replace, but they can. You can move some of your stuff over here. Now, there are limitations, right? Like with anything in Dataverse, there are limitations on the number, you know, like what is it? I always forget the word for that thing. There's like a overarching name for it. I don't know. But anyway, there's limitations in the respect of how much usage you can get out of them. So there's a limitation on the number of API calls in Power Platform or in Dataverse, right? There's limitations on your storage size that you can use in Dataverse. All of that stuff applies to plugins and low-code plugins as well. So a call to a low-code plugin does count as an API, account against your API usage, right? So keep that in mind. It's not a limitless thing. You just need to be aware of that, just like anything that you're building in Dataverse. All right, allocations. There you go. Yeah, thank you. Man, why do I always forget that? I actually wrote that word down really big in like my like day planner, so I wouldn't forget it, and I still forget it every time. I don't even think that's the word I'm looking for, but it's better than what I came up with. Anyway, all right, so let's build a low-code plugin. We're already halfway through this, so let's get started. We've got two flavors of low-code plugins. We've got automated plugins and we've got instant plugins. For those of you who are familiar, come from the plugin world, automated plugin is the same as a plugin that executes based on a event in Dataverse, those CRUD operations. So that's what an automated plugin is. An instant plugin is actually a custom API on the back end. So when you create an instant plugin, it generates a custom API in Dataverse for you that you can call from anywhere. So pretty cool, right? I have an example. So I got an app here. This is a IoT app as an example. And I thought this was kind of cool too. So this is actually, so this table is actually a virtual table, and it's sourced from SQL. And it actually, if we jump over here and look at SQL, so now I'm getting a little off topic, but just bear with me. I thought this was kind of cool. So here's my IoT table with device names and IDs, and then I've got a device health associated with it. And I've surfaced that as a virtual table in Dataverse. And what I want to do is I want there to be a way for me to notify a technician if there's a certain threshold on this device health, it goes below, right? And I can't necessarily auto assign the technician, or the system can't auto assign the technician because we have to have a human involved in that. But all of that IoT data, all that data from these devices is going into that SQL table. And I have to have somebody go in and assign a technician if one of these devices falls below our threshold, right? So if I look at my daily sensor status alerts, I've actually got a couple in here that are below my threshold. My threshold's 50. So I've got a handful that are below that 50 threshold. If I were the dispatcher for my technicians, I would come in here and here comes my cat. I would come in here and I would look and I would see information about the device and figure out who I'm going to assign. And I would go ahead, cat. I would go ahead and assign a technician, right? But once I assign that technician, I also want to have them notified that they're being assigned. And I could do that with Flow, right? Like on update of this this daily sensor status record, when I assign this technician, I could kick off a flow and I could use that flow to go send an email to that technician, or maybe send them a text or something like that. But I don't have Flow. I don't have a license to Flow, and it's kind of an important thing that they get that notification. So I do want it to be synchronous, and I do want it to notify me immediately if something goes wrong, because this is very important. So I'm going to write a plugin for that instead of a flow. So let's just assign myself here. I'll go ahead and save it. And it's the cool thing I wanted to show, and the fact that I said it was a virtual table, is I didn't realize that plugins actually ran on virtual tables. I just found that out like yesterday. So that's taken a little while. The reason it's taking a little while is it's actually running my low-code plugin over here, which you'll see under automated. I have a send alert on update low-code plugin. Sorry. Come on, buddy. You got to go. I can't right now. So you can see I actually got an alert, right? Like I assigned myself. So I got that little toast notification over here that says there was a sensor alert. I also got an email over here that tells me I got an alert and all the device information. And the way that I did that is all through the magic of a low-code plugin. Let's take a look at it. So I'm going to edit this. And give that a little bit to spin up here. Any questions while I'm waiting for this to load? Why it's taking so long? There it goes. I see a lot of chatter in the chat, and I can probably answer some questions afterwards. Okay, so I have a low-code plugin. It is tied to my daily sensor status table. It runs on update of a record, and by virtue of me simply going in here and assigning a technician, saving it, this low-code plugin triggered. And you can see this looks, if you've worked with Canvas apps or any other Power Effects in Power Platform, this should look familiar. It's not formatted real well, unfortunately. I think that's an improvement that we can make here, is to be able to have this formatted a little bit nicer. But if we look at what happened, you can see I'm looking to see if the assigned technician is blank, right, in this record, literally this record. If it is not, I'm actually calling a connector. So I'm calling the shared office connector, and you can see over here on the right that we have all sorts of connections in low-code plugins like we do in Flow, and you can create additional connections from the library of connections. So I have an Office 365 Outlook connection configured for this low-code plugin, and I'm able to use that to send an email. And I send it to my internal email address that's on my user record. Here's the title, here's the body. I'm pulling off all the pertinent information from the record that I was updating. And I'm also then calling this get X send app notification. So if I didn't send it, or if I didn't assign myself while I was logged in, the idea behind the send app notification is if somebody had the app on their phone and I send it to another person, they would see that notification come up. Or if they're using the desktop client, they would see it just like I did. But yeah, so you can do, you can do these sort of built-in, you can call these sort of built-in APIs. You can use connectors in these. You can do, you can iterate over records if you wanted to. So I could come in here and, look at all the accounts and things, cat's back. I can go look for, what account is associated with this or something. I can look up Aiden's record and send him all those emails. So a lot of power here in what you can do. And that's effectively all I really have time to show on the automated side of things. You do have the option, and I just noticed this is being a little bit wonky right now. But you do have the option to do these pre or post. And this is actually a bug that should be fixed on the next version. But anyway, you do have the ability to do a pre or post, similar to how you have to do in plugins. So if you are setting values on the record, for example, like if I wanted to fill in a field on the record prior to its saving, I could do this as a pre-update plugin, and then I could assign values to the fields on that record before it saves, and it would actually show up immediately in the record on the screen. Otherwise, if you're not setting values on the record itself, you can do it in a post operation, which is, okay, everything's saved to the record. Now I want to send an email, go create other records, and do things like that. So that is the automated plugin. And just very quickly, I will show you an instant plugin. So I created a similar instant plugin. And if we edit this, it's almost identical to the one that we just looked at. Syntactically, it's a little bit different because this is an instant plugin. It's not executing in the context of a record, so you don't see anything in here that says this record. Instead, you see a bunch of lookups that I'm doing in order to get the record identified by this input parameter. So input parameters are allowed in instant plugins, output parameters, right? So I can output things. These are APIs. These are custom APIs that you pass in some value to. It'll spit out values back to you. And you've got options for types of things you can return as well. So you can make them strongly typed. I can test this by going here. And if I go back to my device alerts, or oh, go away. Stupid pin thing is always in my way. So I can go here, and all I need is the ID of a record. Go back to my plugin and plug in the record ID and click run. And it's going to tell me if it was successful or not. in a couple of seconds. And if it is successful, I should get another email, and I should get another toast notification in the model-driven app. And it was awesome. Yeah, and it sent that alert almost immediately when it finished. There it is. Back here, do I have another notification? Sometimes the notifications take a little while to show up, but anyway, you get the idea. The last thing I'll show you is how do you call these from other places, right? So if I go back to home and select this and I say copy code snippet, I can jump out here. Look at this. I'm going to spin up an app in the 3 minutes we got left. Start with the page design, blank canvas. Here it comes. Come on. You can do it. I'm going to insert a button. There we go. And I need to add the environment. Let's add the environment. There you go. Environment, Dataverse environment. Anytime you're calling custom APIs or out of the box APIs, you call them using this environment dot syntax. And if everything went well, it should be oh no, it's because it doesn't know what value is. Let's see. I can get my, please in my way. Get my ID. 2 minutes. Okay, here we go. Let's just plug that in, right? This is our input parameter. Oh, come on, man. Invalid. Maybe it doesn't need this braces. Does it? Let's see. That's some invalid arguments. Incompatible type. Oh, it's expecting a record. I set it up as a entity reference. So, okay. I don't know. What is it? Is it logical name? Something like that. Anyway, all right. Maybe I'm not going to get a chance to do it because it's expecting an entity reference, not a string. That's a bummer. Anyway, that's the idea. You should be able to plug this in to a Power App, call that custom API we just created, and run it. And that's it for the Dataverse Accelerator and low-code plugins.
Mike, are these types of plugins that we're looking at now, are they handled like actions under the hood?
The instant plugins?
Yes.
They're handled like custom APIs.
Okay, so you could also invoke this from Power Automate or even
JavaScript.
from a plugin, just making a request. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, you could do it from JavaScript as well, right? Yep.
Nice. Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
All right, excellent. That was fantastic. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you.